Welcome. Thank you all for joining us today for the May installment of our 2025 virtual workshop series, the last of our spring lineup. My name is Drew Scammell, pronouns he, they, and I'm a program associate in the Center for STEM Education and Workforce, or CSU, at the American Association for the Advancement of Science. On behalf of our AAAS IUS initiative, I'd like to welcome you to today's workshop, Enhancing the Learning Experience, Implementable and Adjustable Learning Models for Educators. Today's workshop will feature presentations from Dr. Martene Stanberry, Dr. Sheila Tabanli, and Dr. Cheryl Bergstaller. Before we jump into the workshop, I do have a few housekeeping notes I want to address. This presentation is being recorded. The recording and the speaker slides, along with some resources they provided, will be made available in the coming weeks on our website at AAASIUS.org. You'll also receive an email with a link to the archive when it's available. Please note we will transition to Q&A and discussion breakouts following the presentations, and those breakout rooms will allow for deeper engagement and will not be recorded. Additionally, we have closed captioning for this workshop offered via Zoom. You can download and view the full transcript by clicking the CC button at the bottom of your screen. And for those of you who are new to AAAS IUS, this initiative seeks to support faculty, students, and the greater undergraduate STEM education community by disseminating research and knowledge about STEM teaching, learning, equity, and institutional transformation. We invite you to learn more about the AAAS IUS initiative on our website and hope you'll join our community as future contributors. You can also follow us on X, formerly Twitter, at IUS Program, and LinkedIn to stay up to date on our latest events, blogs, or to share what you've learned at today's workshop. And with that being all from my end, I will shift over to our first presentation of the day. I'd like to welcome Dr. Martene Stanberry, Professor of Mathematics at Tennessee State University. So Dr. Stanberry, I'll stop sharing and hand it over to you.
Okay, that sounds good. Okay. All right, so today I'll be presenting about a funded grant project that we worked on this past academic year. The title of the project is First Year Achievement by Supporting Students' Transitions in Engineering. And specifically, this presentation will focus on implications for academic and career development in undergraduate STEM education. So I want to start with just an overview of the presentation. I'll begin with an introduction about the institution and the particular funded project. Then I'll go over some of the related literature. I'll talk about methods or the approach that we used for the interventions with the students, results, and then some concluding remarks. Introduction. So I'm a professor at Tennessee State University, which is a public, co-educational, urban, historically Black university founded in 1912. We offer associates, bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees. This particular project focused on students seeking bachelor's degrees in either a discipline of engineering or computer science. During the fall of 2024, the undergraduate enrollment was about 5,000 students, 65% of which were female and 35% which were male. And the fall enrollment in 2024 for architectural, civil, electrical, mechanical, engineering, and computer science was 602 students. So about 11% of the undergraduate population. As I stated, this is about a funded project called First Year Achievement by Supporting Students' Transitions in Engineering, or for short, FAST in Engineering. So FAST in Engineering was supported by grant funding through Northeastern University from Department of Homeland Security. So we had somewhat of a sub-award to do some project to impact students in engineering. And we had 2 cohorts of undergraduate engineering students at Tennessee State University, and they were engaged in academic and career development activities to augment their academic experiences. So the project goals for FAST in Engineering, number 1, to increase science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, STEM, student learning and engagement. Number 2, to retain more underrepresented minority or URM students in the engineering disciplines. And number 3, to improve the graduation rate of engineering students. We had expected outcomes to enhance undergraduate STEM student awareness of academic and career opportunities in STEM, to increase the number of engineering students prepared to engage in research, and to develop a culture of undergraduate engineering student success. And student success encompasses not just, doing academically well, but also developing as professionals. So now I'll talk about a review of related literature. So one of the approaches or evidence-based practices that we incorporated is a cohort learning model. So a cohort shares 5 characteristics: defined long-term membership, a common goal, common series of learning experiences, structured meeting schedule, and a network of synergistic learning relationships. And it has been shown that cohort-based interventions have been effective in helping low-income and underrepresented students buffer against feelings of low sense of belonging, isolation, and alienation in competitive STEM majors. Another practice that we used for this project was professional development. STEM student professional development refers to specific interventions, programs, research, and other efforts designed to enhance STEM students' interests, self-efficacy, identity exploration, STEM skills, and their intention to pursue STEM careers. Career development activities have shown efficacy with general undergraduate populations, and now more recently, there have been more publications around STEM-specific undergraduate populations being impacted positively by career development. Another component that we incorporated into the project was experiential learning. According to the Association for Experiential Education, the hallmark of experiential education is challenge and experience followed by reflection, leading to learning and growth. This approach to learning emphasizes student engagement through direct experience and deep reflection to increase knowledge, develop skills, and define values. Throughout the experiential learning process, the student is actively engaged in posing questions, investigating, experimenting, being curious, solving problems, assuming responsibility, being creative, and constructing meaning, all while being challenged to take initiative and make decisions and be accountable for results. So the main way that we incorporated the experiential learning was through dealing with career fair, an assignment that the students had towards kind of really preparing for going to the career fair, targeting opportunities. And then we also had some reflective type things we did where the students were able to explore kind of this experiential learning towards professional development. Methods. So overall, the goal for this particular project was to put students on a pathway to persistence and graduation in engineering disciplines, as well as prepare them for internships and post-graduation opportunities. We use several different ways of collecting information or data from the students to gain some kind of idea about what really worked for them, how they see themselves, and what types of additional support they would like to have as engineering students. The timeline of the project was this past academic year, 2024 to 2025. So the program design basically had 2 major components. The first component was around academic development. The students were engaged with completing academic success modules. They had to do some goal setting, short-term and long-term goals around academics, but also personal and professional. And then they also had to complete a research paper and do some exploration based on the topic, and then their, kind of perspective about what they want to actually do in their future careers. And then the other component was around career development. So we talked about some of the experiential learning. The students were engaged in participating in a STEM seminar series where we had several recent STEM graduates, engineering graduates from Tennessee State come back and talk about their experiences as students, but also their experiences as professionals, and then even opportunities that they may have had at their particular company where students could be hired as interns or potentially work there once they finish their degrees. And then we also had a presentation from Department of Homeland Security Center of Excellence. And they talked about how, engineering is used to solve real life problems. So I think that was insightful for students as well. They also engaged in reflective journaling. So like, what do they really want to do? Why do they want to do it? Personality traits and characteristics towards, their future career goals. And then also some engagement with the career center. So like reviewing the resume. And then students also had an interest in a lot of the topics around preparing to market yourself and things like that. So students were selected based on the following kind of criteria. They had to be a student who was enrolled in multivariable calculus, demonstrated a potential to benefit from the program activities. And we actually had 2 cohorts. And each cohort had 8 students. So in the fall 2024 semester, we had 3 sophomore level students and 5 juniors participating in the program. And then in the spring, we had 2 freshmen students, 1 sophomore, 4 juniors, and 1 graduating senior. And these students were either majoring in architectural engineering, civil engineering, computer science, electrical engineering, or mechanical engineering. So now I want to talk a little bit about the results, focusing on some of the responses from the students through surveys and interviews around where they see themselves, their motivation level, as well as what type of support they think could help, and then also the impact of FAST engineering on their academic and professional development. So this model engaged participants in independent and collaborative activities with an emphasis on strengthening academic skills, offering exposure to engineering careers, and building career readiness. Data were collected through unstructured interviews, surveys, reflective journaling, experiential learning, and observations to explore experiences, opinions, characteristics, and preferences of participants. So the first question that I want to focus on is, what motivates you most to succeed in engineering? And we asked the students for this question to just select 2 of the 5 choices. And so overwhelmingly, the number 1 answer was good job opportunities. So 91% said that good job opportunities really motivated them to be a student majoring in an engineering discipline. And then 58% passion for engineering. So just having a desire to be an engineer and liking the things that are related to what we know about being an engineer. Hands-on projects, 33%. Scholarships and financial incentives, 25%. And faculty and/or peer support, 17%. So the second question was, as an engineering student, what challenges make it harder for you to stay motivated? And in this question, we asked students to select all that apply. So number 1 was course difficulty at 58%. And then kind of, I think, to follow that, the second was time management and/or workload, which was 50%. Lack of hands-on learning, 33%. Unclear career opportunities, also 33%. And then feeling disconnected from peers and faculty was 33%. Question 3, what additional resources or support would help you feel more academically and professionally prepared? And in this question, we asked students to select all that apply. And number 1 for this group of students was internship or co-op and/or more hands-on projects and labs, which were both at 67%. And then 58% networking events with industry professionals. So all of that around being more prepared to apply their knowledge and skills from the classroom to actual real life engineering questions and problems and projects. And then having an opportunity to engage with other STEM professionals, which, they aspire to be STEM professionals. And then 42% was career counseling or job placement assistance. And then 33% more tutoring and or academic support. And so since this group of students, I would consider to be high achieving, pretty much able to handle, school, and they're getting A's and B's or all A's. I think, tutoring or academic support is not as high in terms of the percentage as, trying to figure out really how to be ready for the next step, which will be their career after they graduate. So the next two questions were open-ended or free response type questions. So students could indicate whatever they wanted for their response. So question 4, what academic or professional skills have you developed or enhanced as a FAST and engineering scholar? So as you can see in the word cloud, research, study skills, networking, becoming more industrious, communication, time management, learning how to optimize or utilize resources, collaboration, and then even improving writing skills. Question 5, using a word or phrase, how would you describe your experience in FAST in engineering programs? So as you can see, growth, interesting, learning about opportunities, confidence building, insightful, expanded their horizons, networking, beneficial, and helpful. Conclusion. So my key takeaways from working with these students and my engagement with them, in the classroom, but also outside of the classroom, would be number 1, a cohort learning model benefits students by providing increased accountability, enhanced motivation from shared goals, more engagement due to peer interactions, and building a sense of community. And number 2, professional identity can be developed through personal values, goal setting, participation in professional organizations, continuous learning, reflection, mentorship, networking, and building a reputation within the chosen career path, beginning with an internship, co-op experience, or undergraduate research. Some of the implications specific to, some of the feedback that we received through the questions that we asked through survey. FAST and engineering scholars had the ability to connect with each other, faculty, and recent STEM graduates outside of the classroom setting. And this allowed the scholars to develop a rapport with peers, faculty, and STEM professionals. The average grade point average for the scholars was like a 3.52. So I would consider these to be high achieving students. And then for this student population, there seemed to be a desire to strengthen career knowledge and skills through internships, hands-on projects and labs, and networking with prospective companies. During the seminar series, scholars interacted with representatives from Department of Homeland Security, Center for Accelerating Operational Efficiency, and recent TSU graduates who are early career STEM professionals. The scholars reported the seminars were insightful and inspiring. The seminars provided the scholars with insights about successfully navigating college, career opportunities in STEM, and utilizing data and technology to solve real-world problems like weather reporting and airport security. It is important for engineering students to build a sense of belonging and self-efficacy. This can enhance a student's commitment to persist in the major and strengthen their desire to become a STEM professional. Overall implications of the research, this study adds to the emerging body of knowledge on the effectiveness of cohort-based interventions on underrepresented minority students majoring in STEM disciplines. This study also adds to the knowledge base on the impact of professional development activities on undergraduate students majoring in STEM disciplines. And I think there are opportunities for theory development in how a cohort learning model can be enhanced by incorporating specific academic and career development activities. And here are a list of references. Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Stanberry. With that, I will now hand it over to our next speaker. Sorry, let me find my notes. For our next speaker, we have Dr. Sheila Tabanli, Assistant Professor of Teaching at Rutgers University, New Brunswick. Dr. Tabanli, over to you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me and thank you for being here. The title of my talk is Enhancing the Learning Experience, Implementable and Adjustable Learning Models for Educators. I really appreciate what I heard from my colleague, Dr. Stanberry, and here you will be hearing about our efforts at Rutgers, New Brunswick. Similar to what you discussed, Martene, in terms of self-regulated learning, the reflective assignments, and evidence-based strategies that we incorporated. The cohort was a little bit different, as I'm going to talk more about it. A little bit about myself. I think they already posted my bio. Thomas, thank you for that. So I'm not going to read my biography, but basically what I would like to share with you is, in addition to teaching at higher education systems, I have been high school teacher and administrator at suburb and inner city in the state of New Jersey. So prior to joining the non-tenure track teaching faculty at Rutgers University, I was a high school teacher. And coming from that K-12 culture was different in terms of the expectations around pedagogical workshops or PDs. So this is my effort to reduce this gap through this faculty development and student development program. So the abstract, I added something just to hopefully capture your attention. Is Gateway Mathematics courses, or are plural, right? Gateway or gatekeeper to STEM? Again, you don't need to answer this in the chat. And throughout my talk, we will be discussing this based on data. So this presentation is in the intersection of evidence-based mathematics education. Where are we getting the evidence from? We are getting the evidence from cognitive science and social emotional learning research. And that's what this talk is about. There is a research about how humans learn effectively. If we don't put this research, especially in an institution like Rutgers or other research-intensive universities or institutions, I think we are not fully utilizing the resources that we have. So as a teaching faculty, we also need to have a growth mindset and develop ourselves in our domain, the teaching domain, in terms of how to become a better learner, more effective teacher, so we can address our students' needs and interests. So I developed this course. It's a hybrid course, and I call it a non-traditional course because this is the course. I don't even teach math. I don't teach pre-calc, I don't teach calculus, but I teach students how to approach mathematics from an evidence-based perspective. What are the cognitive science-based strategies that they can learn and apply on a weekly basis through the journaling, just like my colleague mentioned, on a regular basis? And what are the anxieties or the myths of a math brain, or the gender biases that we have exist in our society? So I will be also sharing our data from this course, and some takeaways that I hope that you will take away with you to your own teaching practices, to your own research. The two frameworks that I developed, one of them is an instructional framework that just today at Rutgers, we have active learning symposium. So my colleagues and I had a panel about how they utilize the instructional framework that I developed into their respective disciplines, different mode of instruction. And the other model that I will be introducing to is the 3C pedagogical model. That stands for, the 3C stands for compassionate, connected community with cognitive apprenticeship. And of course, I will be unpacking these terms for your attention as well. So we have 3 session goals. We will talk about self-regulated learning principles. Just like my colleague mentioned, how to give these tools to the students to become self-advocates. Because if you don't provide these explicit instructions, we cannot, in my humble opinion, we cannot expect students just to have this self-advocacy behavior or the attitudes to advocate for their own learning and success. How do we promote that they belong in math or STEM? And how we can give the tools for their academic success. The second goal we have is how did I integrate these evidence-based practices in my math classes and in that non-traditional course. By the way, whatever I'm sharing it with you, I also incorporated in my mathematics for business majors course and also mathematics for life science majors. And during summer, I'll be teaching our 3rd calculus course, which is calculus 1 for engineering majors. So I look forward to incorporating it in that specific course as well. And the last goal is, how can we implement this? And these are small takeaways that you can take away to your own teaching space if you're a teaching instructor or a research space to make it a broader impact application. So guess and check. So for this one, I'm going to invite you to please put it in the chat. What do you think is the most hated subject from the 1950s? If you are comfortable, I invite you to put it in the chat. If you don't want to send it to everyone, you may send it to me if you like. Or if you want to just speak up, feel free to do so. So I'm looking at it. We have 54 participants, and this is what I do in my classes too. So let's improve our engagement, our participation. So thank you so far, those of you who participated, and thanks for the direct messages. Okay, I'm hearing multiple disciplines. Math was the first one, civics, language, chemistry, history, math, arithmetics, math, physics. Okay, can we get some more insights, some more feedback? So the discipline that is, I believe, repeated the most based on the direct messages I received. Yes, please, David, feel free to guess. This is guess and check, right? Okay, now the drum roll. I wrote an op-ed about it on Inside Higher Ed. There was a New York Times article in 1950s, and according to that, the most hated subject was mathematics. So now I want to take you to now 2025. I'm doing the math, right? 75 years later, where we are. You can look it up, and again, I'm basing it on what I'm observing as an educator and what I'm hearing from my students. Yes, chemistry and math, they go along together, I believe, because they feed on to one another. However, math is considered something like some students feel like they do not belong. Okay, now another guess and check, and thanks for your participation so far. If you are teaching math, or if you want, you can Google it. What is the nationwide average DFW, D, fail? Those are the grades and withdrawal rates for Calculus 1. Again, this is guess and check. Yes, David, thanks for the first input, about 25%. Okay, I'm saying, okay. So I need to be very clear about it. I apologize if my question wasn't clear. You don't need to pick the numbers I'm giving to you. If you want, you can put 35% or 0%. So this is a number between 0 to 100 in a way. High numbers, okay, Nancy? higher than 25%. Okay, Jessica, 5%. Okay, Joanna, I'm seeing 68%. Okay. So it ranges. Okay, let's put this together. So based on the numbers that you shared with me in the chat, this nationwide average DFW for introductory, and this is introductory calculus, is anywhere between 5% to 68%. So thank you for your participation. Now let's look at some data to analyze it. I intentionally put the dates here to see that how it progressed from 1996. In this article, it says that calculus is consistently a difficult subject because it's basically a demanding subject, because there are several abstract concepts on many of the topics. And in this special report at EdSource for the California State University, 23 campuses, out of 21 out of 23 campuses, there was this DFW rate of at least 20%. And here they also added that if this DFW rate is higher than 20%, it's a matter of great concern. And at 10 of those campuses, including Los Angeles, this rate was even as high as 30%. So there is this MAA report also about calculus sequence. It was published in 2024. It also shows us numbers close to what your common predictions are, around 25%, 21%, 27%. So in other words, when I go to my classroom, based on the statistics that has been recorded for many, many years, I know that about 1 out of 3 students are gonna either get a D, F, or they are gonna withdraw. They will give up. They won't persist through my course. So again, as scientists, right, as professionals, that we already have this data. Now, what can we do about it? Because this is not an acceptable number to see that our students, if I have a group work, if I put 3 students in the same group, I know that 1 out of 3 may not make it. So those of you who are mathematicians, pure math, applied math, or STEM faculty, and I'm assuming that we are all STEM faculty here, there is Polya considered father of mathematical problem solving. So he has a framework for us. And it starts with to really understand the problem. So I think in our case, we understood the problem, I hope, that mathematics in general, calculus, these are they acting like a gateway to STEM, or are they keeping the gates and pushing some students away? So now, since we understood the problem, what is the next step, right? According to Polya, and we are gonna see the connection to it to self-regulated learning, we have to have a plan. So the 2 frameworks that I shared it with you, that I will share more details about it, are about that plan. 2 models that I will be sharing it with you, that's my plan. I carry out the plan, I implemented it, and now I'm on the reflection part. Looking back, what can I do better? What can I do more? What are the things that I should be revising my framework? So first, self-regulated learning. Again, Dr. Stanberry, this is very similar to what you mentioned. We want students to be self-regulated, to know what it means. So the first bullet is about the definition of it. So again, we are goal-oriented beings. So to give them the tools to become self-regulated learners so they can independently regulate their own learning. So what is self-regulation is not? It is not a mental ability or an academic performance. Excuse me, sorry. And it is considered as an activity. So the learners, in a self-regulated way, they act on it. Activity, they act on it, they produce something. So in other words, this is not, it's from this publication, Zimmerman 2000. It's not a cohort event that students have no idea what is going on. that happens to them in reaction to our teaching. So there is nothing untransparent about it. There is nothing unclear about it. So the students are regulating their own learning. So we are not, it's not a byproduct of something they get in a classroom setting, but they are given the tools to be able to self-regulate their own learning. So I will also explain it to you how I did it through this course that I designed. So similar to Polya's framework for mathematical problem solving, what are the goals? What strategies I'm gonna use to reach my goal, to address the problem? Let's reflect on my performance and go back and review the results again. So this is the cycle of self-regulated learning. And as I mentioned to you, in mathematics, we have, as we all know it, we have several gaps. But today I'm interested in addressing two gaps. One of them is the research to practice gap in math teaching and learning. And the other one is the novice to expert perception gap. So the non-traditional course that I mentioned to you, it goes with this Fink's significant learning theory, which already includes a domain on learn how to learn. So the students are explicitly informed that we are using Fink's significant learning theory that already has learn how to learn component. I have 3 modules or learning objectives for the students. We talk about what are the ways, effective ways to learn mathematics, grounded in the research from cognitive science. What are the mindsets and attitudes about our math learning and performance, and what are the tools to actually go back and apply these cognitive science-based strategies and the mindset interventions that we explicitly cover in the class. Again, in this course, I do not teach calculus. I do not teach intermediate algebra. I do not teach any math content. However, I teach students this how to learn how to learn principles and how they can apply to their respective math courses that I'm not the coordinator, I'm not the instructor of. Some of the students are not taking any math courses, so they have also that flexibility to be able to utilize it for their non-math courses. So the RR2PG, Reducing Research to Practice Gap in Teaching and Learning Framework, has 3 components. This is applicable for face-to-face instruction, prior to class, during class, and after class. So these are the components based on cognitive science principles. As you can see, retrieval practice is something very dominant, something very common in every phase of the learning journey or the process. And it's also grounded in the work on social emotional learning. So let's analyze the next problem. Again, I acknowledge that some of you may not be able to solve the next problem I'm gonna show you, but again, my intention is to show mathematics is a demanding subject. I'm not saying it's a hard subject or an easy one, but it's a demanding subject. And this is something I explicitly share with my students. So now let's analyze this. How many different skills, procedures, concepts, theorems a student must master in order to solve this next problem accurately? So if you are comfortable, you can put it in the chat in terms of how many different concepts that you think a student needs to know to be able to solve this problem correctly. It's from my Math 135, Calculus 1 for Life Science majors, Chapter 3, Derivatives, Related Race Problems. So this is the problem, a very typical related race problem. And actually, I just gave another talk, a deep dive talk at our conference at Rutgers Rumi conference, and we already had this activity where we had a little bit more time to be able to decipher it, and the numbers vary about 10. So according to these mathematicians, there are about 10. When we scaffold it, when we unpack various different skills and concepts one person needs to know to be able to solve this problem accurately, this is not a one problem or a one related race problem, but a student, a learner, a novice has to know at least 10 different things, starting from arithmetic, algebra skills to be able to learn, to be able to solve this problem correctly. So, so the point I would like to make is learning is complicated, so does teaching. And I also studied a fellowship at my institution. It's called Research to Practice Fellowship. And especially as an expert in our field, when we are not even aware how demanding this subject is, or the problems that are so easy to us as experts, then we are becoming a victim to this cognitive bias called a curse of expertise. And then we get the students who have hesitations towards taking a math class or following a STEM major. So this is a cognitive bias based on educational psychology, that when an expert is not even aware of how a novice views the same problem, like the problem that I just showed to you now, then they might be thinking, oh, this is so easy. However, for a novice, it may not be that easy. So this is what I call, again, I didn't coin this. However, I wrote a guidebook about it, how we can reduce this perception gap between the novices and experts. So now I want to share my data. Thankfully, I recently received an IRB. So in my course, Math 125, please remember, I'm not teaching these students any of the core concepts. I'm not teaching pre-calc, I'm not teaching algebra. We talk about and we apply Polya's framework for mathematical problem solving. However, the students are given these tools based on cognitive science, social emotional learning, framed in a self-regulated learning to take ownership of their own learning. So as you can see now, these are the before my course, 29% success rate. By the way, many of these students are academic probation students. They are not honors students. Most of them are academic probation students. The course that I have is one out of, I believe, 4 different academic probation courses we have at my institution. And this is during. So it acts like a correct, although it is not labeled as a correct. The other data that I would like to share with you is the math GPA. So thanks to Emily, who is the math head advisor at our department, this math GPA also improved from 0.58 to 2.19. Drew, I assume I have very few minutes left. Am I correct? Yeah, okay, thank you. So
5 minutes. 5 minutes if we could wrap.
Okay, thank you. So as I mentioned, I also completed a fellowship at Rutgers, New Brunswick, and I recruited students who are willing to, who are comfortable to share their experiences, not only at Rutgers, but coming from K to 12. So this is the process in terms of, we video recorded it, it's on YouTube, by the way, that students answer some questions. I really wanted to capture the joy that they have in learning math. And what I found out that the joy is linked with the students being able to solve these problems. I was looking for an instructor interaction in the joy, and I couldn't find it. So to me personally, that's an important thing to note. So when a student is confused, what makes them, what empowers them to speak up? These are the type of questions that I asked them. So based on that, the students were very honest and very, in a kind way, explain their experiences by comparing and contrasting from what they experienced in K-12 setting and the Rutgers. And I came up with this 3C pedagogical model. So the 3C stands for compassion. And I think this is rooted in this cognitive bias that some of us may have, maybe all of us as the experts in our domain, that they want a compassion, they don't want to be judged when they make a mistake, which is understandable. And they want to have these connections. These connections are not only with their peers or the instructor, like building a rapport, but to real life examples and how these pre-calc concept is related to Calc 2 later on in their academic journey. They also want connections with peers and instructors, of course, but also this cognitive apprenticeship, which means being intentional about the way that I'm thinking, so they can, I can model the way that I look at this problem, that I view this problem, and step by step scaffold it, and being explicit about the steps I'm taking as the expert, so they can build this expert-like orientations. So they start thinking like an expert because I'm being explicit in the way that I'm solving these math problems that are easy to me. And we also asked them what you wish your professor would know about you and your math learning. Yes, they talk about scaffolding, they talk about joy, and they talk about a little bit of push in the right direction. But I really want to share the next one with you. And this is, to me, the most outstanding, most honest, most insightful comment we received along with the others, that as the experts, we are very passionate about what we know, what we teach. And based on this, my takeaway from this specific student's comment is they want this passion to be shared with them. Our passion makes the student feel more passionate about the subject. And this is the guidebook that I have. I will be happy to talk more about it. There's the QR code in the breakout room we have. And I would like to also acknowledge the funding I received from Rutgers, New Brunswick, DICE, and my partner, Rutgers SAS AOF program. So these are some of the references. I'll be happy to share it with anyone interested in. It's in the slides already, so thank you for your attention.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Tabanli. And last but not least, I'd like to introduce our closing speaker, Dr. Sheila Tabanli, affiliate professor at the University of Washington and City University of New York. So once Tabanli pulls down their slides, we'll hand over to you, Dr. Tabanli. Oh, perfect.
Hello. Wow, this has been really interesting so far. I can certainly see some overlaps between our presentations. And mine, I'm going to zero in on one particular population. Those would be students with disabilities. And so I'm going to talk about improving STEM education specifically, but more generally as well, any type of education, by making digital content accessible to all students, including those with disabilities. My name is Sheryl Burgstaller. I work at the University of Washington. I've actually retired from there, but I work part-time, still doing some teaching. So let's take a look at some common and expensive digital accommodations for courses, hybrid courses, online courses, even courses that are on site, but there are some online resources. What are our disability students' offices doing to help students with disabilities? Well, by far, making inaccessible documents accessible, mainly reformatting PDFs. The problem is that PDFs often don't give access to the text for a student. And someone who's blind using a screen reader, for example, gets the text read aloud to them. And so if your syllabus is a scanned in text document, they wouldn't be able to get access to the content unless it's reformatted. Or use some special tools. So that's a big deal. And then captioning videos. And you might think, well, gee, look at YouTube. A lot of our videos up on YouTube, they are all captioned. Well, not all of them. And if you have seen a captioned video on YouTube where it's not very accurate, no punctuation, misspelled words, it's because the owner of that video neglected to edit it. Computer-generated captions are available to be your first draft, and they clearly have thought, well, that's it. And when you think about it, who benefits from videos the most? People who are deaf. And it's a really mean trick. If you put up your video in your class and the little video introduction has captions that with no punctuation and misspelled words, it sends a very strong message to a student who's deaf that you did not think that they might take your class, and so they do not feel welcome. So I think we need a paradigm shift. So I'm going to talk about universal design. We still need accommodations sometimes, but maybe we use that method too much to provide access to our students with disabilities. So universal design, it's basically the design of any product or environment to be usable by all people, so in our case, all students, to the greatest extent possible without the need for adaptation or specialized design. So in those two examples I just gave, what if we made our PDF documents accessible from the get-go, born accessible to someone who's in a screen reader. Then someone who's blind would not have to ask for that accommodation. What about the videos? If we always made sure we're using captioned videos with the accurate captions, again, we wouldn't need that as accommodation. So universal design forces us to kind of think about what we can build in to what we're doing, kind of born accessible, and then use accommodations later for students with disabilities. Quick example, as an image on the screen, it's you can probably tell if you can see the screen, there's a plastic cover on a name tag, kind of the typical one you get at a conference with a pin. Sometimes you get a clip, sometimes you get a lanyard. We developed a universally designed name tag, and that lanyard has a clip on it, or it has a ring on it at the bottom. And so the clip on the name tag can clip to that lanyard if you'd like to use the lanyard. But there's also a safety pin going through there. So if I don't want to use the clip or the lanyard, then I can use a safety pin and put it on my blouse. I'm not a big fan of lanyards, and so this was my solution. I'm told that people like lanyards. I think the name is too low. I want it by their face. And so anyway, so this is a way people can use a lanyard. They can use a pin to fix it to their clothes. They can use a clip. And then my name is on there, very large, bold print, just first name, rather than the organization, because I think we won't know what organization we're representing when we go to a conference or whatever, but we want to know the name of that person. So the most important information is the one that's most visible. So that just gives more flexibility. The flexibility is built into a product. So it's not like you choose one of those three at that registration table and you're stuck with it. You can re-choose how you're going to use that product every day you go to that conference. So universal design has three characteristics. It's technically accessible to people with disabilities. They can actually access it, like on a website or on a document, but it's also usable. And so a website might be technically accessible to a student with a disability, but it's really hard to maneuver around it. And so we want usability and we want inclusiveness, to have a product like the name tag that's one product as much as possible, just a lot of flexibility. I'll give you a couple examples. Technology, the biggest one you can find these days is just by looking at your smartphone. It builds in accessibility features. A lot of features that would be considered assistive technology are actually built in. And so my phone can speak to me more than I'd like sometimes. And I can have white on black, black on white. I can increase the larger the characters. I can make them bold. There are a lot of things I can do. In fact, it's a very good device, these smartphones now, to be used by people who are blind because they're so accessible to the technology they use to read aloud the text. But then you always want to ensure compatibility with assistive technology. I think we'd all agree that an embosser, which produces Braille for a person who's blind, it looks about the size of a small printer. I think we'd all agree that shouldn't be offered in all of our phones. We won't want to carry that around. So that's assistive technology. So we need to make sure that the regular technology, the phone or the computer or whatever, is consistent with, compatible with the technology that might be used by a person who's blind, in this case too, a Braille device. So I talked about benefits of videos. That's another example of universal design, how it benefits a lot of different people. So it definitely benefits people who can't hear the audio. They might be deaf, or they just might not have their audio turned on. It also benefits English language learners. They too need to see the punctuation, see the spelling of words, and they can really be guided incorrectly if you don't make your captions inclusive of them by making them accurate. People in noisy environments, like the airport, we see captions on the screen, so we can watch the news without actually hearing it, and a noiseless location like a library. I often look at videos with my husband when he's watching sports. I don't have the same tolerance for watching everything, single pass and whatever, but I like to look up for the highlights. And so I just use the captions on the videos that I'm looking at. And also people with slow connections, people who want to know the spelling of words, that's pretty much everyone, and who want to find the content quickly. You can actually search through that content, and find certain context, find the content where it's located on a particular video. So what are the principles that underpin this universal design model that I'm talking about, or framework I'm talking about? Well, there are really three sets of principles that are particularly relevant in higher education. Some of you may have heard of the universal design for learning, 3 principles that are being more widely practiced in higher education. But there are 2 other sets that are important too. And one of them is just the basic principles of universal design. They give us guidance, for instance, how to make your physical environment more inclusive of people with disabilities. And then there are 4 principles that guide us with technology. Because again, I'm kind of focusing on digital tools, and universal design for learning can be applied to technology, but often it's not. And it doesn't cover every technology issue you need to address. And so there are 4 principles that underpin what we call the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, which you might have heard of. They're used as standards at many of our institutions by webmasters and other IT folks. But just to sum it up in a nutshell, what we should provide is multiple ways for participants to learn, like video and printed materials, to demonstrate what they have showed, like in their assessments, and to engage. And so when I talk with my students and they want to engage with me one-on-one, I always ask them what tool do they want to use to engage with? If we're nearby, do you want to meet in person? Do you want to meet using Zoom or some other tool? And I can even tell students if they want to just meet by having an email conversation. Sometimes people use that type of conversation when their speech is slow, for example, or they're embarrassed about their speech. And so we give them those opportunities when we can. And then it's important to ensure that all the technologies we use, the facilities, services, resource strategies in our courses are accessible to individuals with a wide variety of disabilities. So we need to have that accessibility in there. So just as an example, what I did with my presentation today is I use a Microsoft PowerPoint template. Templates provided by software companies are generally, they kind of push you towards accessibility, and Microsoft is one of those, so I have a template. I use an accessible PowerPoint document. I'm going to share my document so you can look in there and you look at this accessibility check under tools, see how accessible it is. What does that mean? Well, I use a text format, so a person who's looking at these slides right now, you may not know if that's an image of text that I have on there, or is it you have access to the text on my PowerPoint, and you do have access to text. And so that's important for people using screen readers. Alternative text for images. You can add some alternative text to your images so that if a person who's blind is looking at your slides, like the ones I've submitted today, then they can see what's in the slide. They'll say this image is a logo, do it logo or something. Has structured headings. That means like use your heading structure, heading 1, heading 2, heading 3. Whatever you do, whether it's in a class, in your modules and so forth, because if someone who's blind is reading your document, that screen reader is smart enough to skip from heading to heading. So they can go through, as I would, as a sighted person, and look at the headings and the subheadings and so forth, get a sense of what's in that article. And I might even actually want to skip to the conclusion so I can see if I really want to read the whole thing. And then using that PowerPoint accessibility checker for guidance, in contrast to most slide products, like Google Slides does not have an accessibility checker, but you can actually, there's a third party that has created one. So I present the uncluttered pages. I have plain backgrounds. I have high contrast to text. I use large text, and I spell out acronyms and describe jargon. Additional tips for an online course is to make sure that you point to students to the specific resources to gain needed knowledge and skills. This includes technology skills. I teach on Canvas here at the University of Washington, and I like to point students to the main resources I think they should look at if this is the first time they've used Canvas. I had a faculty member say to me once, why do you do that? We use Canvas for all of our courses. And I said, well, how do I know that this isn't the first course for one of my students? I don't need to know that to know that if I just put it in my resources and say, if you want to get started with Canvas, go here. Others say, well, they can find those resources. Well, they can. They find too many to get started. I don't want to overwhelm them. Offer multiple ways for people to learn and demonstrate learning and engage, as I mentioned. Caption the videos accurately, avoiding PDFs. PDFs are hard to make accessible. They can be made accessible, so more power to you if you want to do that. I teach a lot. I've never used a PowerPoint, never found that, or PDF. Using accessible like HTML is the easiest as far as accessibility, and then even Microsoft Word. Use descriptive wording for any hyperlinks that you have. A person who is using a screen reader can click or tab through the hyperlinks on the page of a website. If you use just click here, click here, click here, it might make your web look kind of consistent. But for a blind person, it's awkward because they want to just see what you're linking to from that page. In order to do it, they're going to have to read all the text surrounding all those links because you're not telling them what is the link the resource that they're connecting to. Simplify and break down images and tables. Provide multiple ways for people to learn. So when you look at universal design is an attitude. Well, what kind of attitude? It's an attitude that it's important to provide access to all of our students. And there are some things we can do proactively because we might have a student with a disability in our class, and we should do that. It's a framework. And I'll point you to some resources on the last slide, but it's a framework which you can look at the scope of it. There are guidelines, principles, practices that are well established, particularly for universal design in general, UDL, and WCAG. And it's a process where you just make your process. When you create your syllabus, you just make it in an accessible format. When you look for a resource and it's a PDF, you maybe kind of try to figure out whether that's accessible or not, and look and see if maybe you can find a HTML version of that document to link to in your class. So it's kind of a process where you're kind of thinking about universal design all the time. It's not hard to incorporate universal design when you're creating class. It takes a little bit of work when you're adding it to a class because you have to redo things you've already done. But even then, you can choose some things and do things one at a time. It promotes best practices. It's not talking about lowering your standards in your class at all. It's just trying to create a level playing field for all of your students. It's proactive. It does not lower standards. It's proactive, which means you're going to think about things ahead of time. And because it is, you can implement things incrementally. So you might think, oh, I'm going to redo my syllabus for next time, and I'm going to make it in an accessible format and just kind of go with that. Or I'm going to make sure that my opening video, I make sure that the captions are included there. And it strives to benefit everyone. That's the goal, and minimizes the need for accommodations. So if you use these principles, then you will not have to provide as many accommodations. We'll still make some available. As I said, I teach online, and the accommodation that I provide pretty much exclusively now is I provide extra time on assignment or something because a person has a health impairment or some other condition that requires that they have more time. And so they can't meet the schedule of something I'm doing. Maybe they're going to be in the hospital or something like that. And I haven't found a way to just build that into my class other than encouraging students to request accommodation for things like that if they need it. And so I even build it into assignments. I have one assignment in a universal design class I'm teaching where they have to go to online and find an image that represents a universal design feature in a physical environment, which might be a gymnasium or a hotel or something. And then share that on the discussion board and share why it's universal design. Well, right in the description of the assignment, I say, alternatively, you can describe an image, describe an environment that you've actually been to recently, and why what is in that environment is universally designed. Noticing then that I am making I'm not making an accommodation for a blind student, I'm providing an alternative for everyone. And some students will choose that type of way to enter that assignment because they just happen to be down in the gym in their local school and they want to say something they have learned about universal design from the class. So as far as your resources, there's the Center for Universal Design and Education, which is housed at the University of Washington under our Do It Center. You'll find the UD framework, and you'll find a document called Equal Access, the Universal Design of Instruction, which is it's 6 pages, has a lot of ideas for making your course accessible. And then a shorter one, 20 tips for teaching in an accessible online course. Has a lot of linked to articles as well for the research that supports universal design. And it has our URL, uw.edu/doit/SHEUDE. And again, my name is Cheryl Burgstaller, and if you want to continue this conversation, it's at SHERYLBURGSTAHLER@outlook.com. And if you want to look at my book, I have a book on this topic. It's Creative Inclusive Learning Opportunities in Higher Education, a Universal Design Toolkit. But a lot of the content is up in our Universal Design Center, so you don't have to buy the book to gain that content.
Super. Thank you so much, Dr. Birdstaller. With that, we are now going to transition to our breakout sessions for Q&A and further discussions. Breakout rooms are self-assigned and organized by speaker. I'm going to ask my colleague Thomas to go ahead and open up the breakout rooms now. As mentioned, organized by speakers, so you'll see the last name. You should see it pop up on your screen, allowing you to select the breakout room of your choice. If you don't see that pop up, you can navigate to the bottom of your screen and select the breakout rooms button and click the room you'd like to enter. If you're running an older version of Zoom and don't see the breakout room button, please post in the chat which speakers room you'd like to enter, and we can assign you on our end. And we'll call people back maybe around, I'd say 3:20, keep out the breakout rooms a little bit shorter so we have more time for group conversation. I'll go ahead and open the rooms now. Yeah, back. Get myself situated here. I know those were some pretty short breakout rooms, so apologies if I cut off conversations or if that felt like a little teaser, but to keep that conversation going, I'd be curious to hear if any of our speakers or Dr. Morin, who joined Dr. Tabanli's room as a facilitator, just some highlights or things you talked about in that breakout room to share with the full group. Dr. Stanberry, if we could start with you as our first presentation of the day.
Sure. So I think maybe I can just highlight the two discussion questions that we focused on, and then I'll talk about what we came up with. So the first question, what are key factors that impact the persistence, progression, and graduation of underrepresented minority students in engineering disciplines? And so for that particular question, we talked a lot about the cohort-based learning or cohort learning model, including some, of course, academic career development, but also some social engagement with students, like intentionally designed experiences, and making sure that the students don't feel isolated at all in any kind of situation or experience that they have as students. And then the second question was, what key strategies can be used to support female engineering students and or underrepresented students generally? And so we talked about those students being connected to affinity groups or organizations to help foster connections, but also to make them aware of opportunities and to see some role models that maybe they can identify with a bit more, relate to, who are engaged either as mentors or advisors or just STEM professionals. And I think that's all we discussed.
Well, thank you. Dr. Tabanli and Dr. Morin, anything you want to share from your breakout room?
So one of the things that we talked about was building student confidence and busting some of the myths of math is hard rather than math is demanding. There were questions about the technique, and I'll let Sheila talk about that.
I would like to clarify one thing. I got it as a direct message. I'm already teaching a core math curriculum courses. So I'm not a separate faculty, I'm a math faculty. But this course I designed is not about mathematics content knowledge. It's about the evidence-based strategies to learn and study for mathematics. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. And Dr. Birdsall, anything you'd like to share from your group?
Sure. I think whatever we talked about fits into three categories. We talked a little bit about the history of universal design and came, around the middle of the last century, but also really getting a big boost in and how it benefits everyone, even though often it benefits students with disabilities. We like the idea that it benefits everyone. For instance, in the WCAG principles and guidelines, you're supposed to make your color combinations, don't use color combinations that people who are colorblind can't distinguish between. And colorblindness is not a disability. So I like that they include it. And WCAG also deals with different reading levels. Second thing, some personal experiences with disability and benefiting from accessible spaces. And then comparing the accessibility of PDFs, Word, and HTML.
Awesome, thank you. Appreciate hearing all that. It's fun to reflect too, because in undergrad I was a mathematics major, and I also worked in our math department a little bit, and I appreciate the emphasis on like reframing how that study is, or how that discipline is presented, and exactly what you talked about, Dr. Tabanli, but then also that my own professors bring in some of the methods that Dr. Stanberry and Dr. Birdsall talked about as well, like how, just using that one discipline as an example, like there's so many different things that you can apply to kind of break down these stigmas, so the actual space feels more approachable. So really appreciate everything y'all shared. Since we're coming up on the end of our time, I'm gonna bring up our closing slides here. And while that's pulling up, I just want to say before we go, I'd like to thank our speakers and our facilitators, the rest of the AASIU's team, and all of you who are able to join and participate in the workshop today. We know May is certainly a busy time with graduations and end of the semester, so really thankful for the time you dedicated here. We have a survey link, which we're posting in the chat and sending via email. The survey should only take a few minutes, but we'd really appreciate your feedback as we continue to develop our virtual workshop series. As mentioned, a recording of the presentation and the slide deck will be posted on our website and emailed to you in the coming days. And with that, thank you all so much for joining us today. Our virtual workshop series is taking a pause for the summer, but we'll be back in August. So be sure to keep an eye out for the fall lineup dropping soon. As always, we look forward to engaging with you and learning from you, our AASIU's community. With that, take care and have a great summer. Thanks so much, everyone.